It's December 30th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dan. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the plane crash here in South Korea. A Jeju Air passenger plane flying from Bangkok crashed while landing at South Korea's Muan International Airport, killing 179 of the 181 people on board. Two people who are both crew members survived South Korea's worst domestic civil aviation tragedy. And the government has declared a 7-day national mourning period, effective starting Sunday. Two black boxes, one of which suffered damage, have been recovered from the plane, which should provide critical facts about the crash. World leaders sent condolences and expressed their sympathy over the loss of life in the plane crash. U.S. President Joe Biden pledged to provide any necessary assistance, while the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board is assisting in analyzing the exact cause of the incident. All passengers and most crew members died in a plane that crashed while landing at an airport in South Korea on Sunday. They were traveling from Bangkok to Muan-gun County. We connect with our Park Kwon-woo at the Muan International Airport. Kwon-woo, walk us through the crash. What exactly happened?
Yes, Tommy, I'm currently standing close at the site of the crash at Muan International Airport in Muan-gun County, southwest part of South Korea. The Jeju Air flight departed from Bangkok on Sunday and was scheduled to land at Muan International Airport at around 8:30 a.m. on Sunday. But crashed due to what some watchers are saying was a malfunction that affected the aircraft's landing gear. The flight crew had received a warning from the airport's control tower about a bird strike hazard during its first landing attempt. Shortly after, the pilot sent a mayday call and initiated a go-around instead of landing. After making a 180-degree turn, the aircraft entered the runway from the opposite end. Instead of landing at the beginning of the runway, the aircraft made contact further along the runway at high speed using the gear-up or belly landing method. The aircraft skidded along the runway and collided with the wall and became engulfed in flames, killing most people on board.
Right. Now, what's even more heartbreaking is that most of those passengers were those on their family trips during the holiday period. Kwon-woo, tell us more about the casualties.
Yes, as you mentioned, the incident claimed the lives of 179 people out of the 181 on board, including 6 crew members. And the majority of the passengers were Koreans, except for 2 Thai nationals. Most of the victims are believed to have been returning from trips to Bangkok during the Christmas holidays. And 2 flight attendants were rescued from the wreckage of the plane and are now in separate hospitals located in Seoul. A male flight attendant who survived reportedly suffered from memory loss following the crash and said the last thing he remembers is fastening his seatbelt before landing.
Well, Kwon-woo, we are also learning that there are passengers who are yet to be identified. How is that process coming along?
Yes, Tommy, the search for victims ended after 11 hours. However, the search for personal belongings is ongoing with the help of around 1,500 rescue personnel. DNA samples from bereaved families were collected at the airport on Sunday, and the identities of at least 140 people have been verified as of around 7 a.m. Monday morning. A temporary morgue has been set up at the Muan airport. Also, the aircraft is confirmed as being a Boeing 737-800, which is used by many domestic airlines and around 100 such aircraft in service. Concerns are thus rising. That's all I have for you now. Back to you, Tommy.
Alrighty, that was our Park Kwon-woo from the crash site. Now, while authorities are trying to pinpoint the exact cause of the incident, there is speculation about what contributed to the crash, from a bird strike to malfunctioning landing gear. Choi Min-jung tells us more.
Muan International Airport issued a bird strike warning just before the deadly Jeju Air passenger plane crash on Sunday. 1 minute after the warning, the pilot, who had more than 6,800 hours of flight experience, issued a mayday call. And just a few minutes later, after a previous attempt to land, the plane landed without its landing gear extended and skidded down the runway before colliding with the wall. An investigation into the cause is underway, with many experts agreeing that a bird strike was the most likely cause. They say such an occurrence may have affected both the engine and hydraulic system, an important component of the landing gear. An expert says that the risk of a bird strike particularly increases during the winter, as migratory birds flock to the area surrounded by lakes and muddy ground in search of food.
While all airports are affected by birds to some extent, it seems that Muan, in particular, is situated in an area with a lot of bird flocks.
Other aviation experts, however, have questioned whether a bird strike is enough to bring such a catastrophic outcome. They argue that pre-existing defects in their aircraft could have been a reason behind the crash, as some note that a second engine could have powered the landing gear even after the failure of the first one. Experts are looking for a transparent answer.
If we just go back a few days to the terrible images from Kazakhstan instead, we will remember that the airplane was bouncing all over. Here it's nice and straight and level. So the pilots are clearly in control of the airplane, which again begs the question, why did they not lower the flaps? Why did they not lower the landing gear?
But the search for answers could see delays, as one of the two black boxes retrieved was partially damaged. According to an official, the flight data recorder was damaged in the crash, whereas the cockpit voice recorder remained intact. The official said decoding the flight data recorder could take at least a month, or even up to around 6 months if it needs to be shipped to the U.S. for decoding. Meanwhile, U.S. investigators, including the National Transportation Safety Board, the Federal Aviation Administration, and Boeing, which manufactured the aircraft, are assisting South Korea in investigating the plane crash. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
And the government has declared a 7-day national mourning period. Muan-gun County, where the crash took place, has also been designated as a special disaster zone. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
During a Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters meeting held in Seoul on Monday morning, South Korea's acting president and finance minister Choi Sang-mok pledged to ensure swift support for the victims and their families.
We will ensure full support for the bereaved families and injured through cooperation with relevant agencies. Government, led by the Transport Ministry, will operate an integrated support center to address and resolve any concerns of the families promptly.
On Sunday morning, a Jeju Air plane returning from Bangkok crashed into a wall at Muan Airport, killing 179 people. A week-long national mourning period for 7 days until January 4th was declared on Sunday. To mark the mourning period, joint memorial altars will be set up both near the site of the crash and across 17 cities and provinces. Government ministries, local governments, and public institutions will display flags at half-mast, and public officials will wear mourning ribbons. The acting president also said on Sunday that the county of Muan-gun, the site of the plane crash, will be designated as a special disaster zone, which allows central government funds to be used for recovery costs that would normally be covered by local government. The designation provides support measures such as condolence payments and medical expense coverage. The Supreme Prosecutor's Office also established an accident response headquarters on Sunday to investigate the cause of the crash more efficiently and thoroughly. Jeju Air, meanwhile, maintained that the crash was not caused by aircraft defects, saying that it always conducted maintenance checks before and after departure and that it did not operate an excessive flight schedule. And the airline pledged to do everything possible to support the families of the victims of the crash by cooperating with the Transport Ministry investigations and utilizing approximately $1 billion in liability aviation insurance. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And civic and social groups are considering postponing a large impeachment rally to mourn the victims of the air crash. The Emergency Action for Yoon Suk-yeol's Immediate Resignation and Social Reform Group released a statement on Sunday that it's currently discussing a plan to postpone a rally scheduled to be held in downtown Seoul on Tuesday. And the group said it hopes the government will establish a communication system for the victims' families and provide both medical and psychological support. A group representing the family members of the Itaewon car crash disaster also expressed their condolences and called for full support for the bereaved families. Now, messages of condolence have been pouring in from around the world following the tragedy at Muan International Airport, including from U.S. President Joe Biden, who vowed to provide any necessary aid. Lee Seung-jae has more.
World leaders have sent messages of condolence to the families of the victims and the Korean people after the Jeju Air crash at Muan International Airport. Taking to X on Sunday, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she was heartbroken to see the images of the plane crash and expressed her deepest condolences to the families of the victims. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also took to X to express his condolences to the victims' families and said he hopes for a speedy recovery for the two survivors. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on the same social media platform called the loss of each life an immeasurable tragedy, adding that Ukraine stands with the Korean people in their time of grief. Both Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba also sent messages. U.S. President Joe Biden issued a statement on Sunday saying that he and First Lady Jill Biden are deeply saddened to hear of the tragic plane crash. Calling South Korea a close ally, Biden said his thoughts and prayers were with those impacted by the tragedy, adding that the U.S. stands ready to provide any necessary assistance. Over in the UK, King Charles also expressed his deep sorrow and said he was profoundly saddened by the crash that killed 179 people. He added that as South Korea mourns the disaster, the families and loved ones of all the victims are in his prayers. The deadliest aviation accident to occur on South Korean soil took the lives of 179 passengers and crew members, with 2 people surviving the tragedy. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol on Sunday once again refused to attend a questioning session at the Corruption Investigation Office for higher-ranking officials. The third summons issued last Thursday is likely to have been the final request. Now, usually investigators request an arrest warrant after 3 summons are rejected. However, whether the court will issue a warrant is not clear, as a sitting South Korean president has never been arrested before. Yoon's legal representatives previously said certain issues have to be settled first, including the fact that the CIO does not have the authority to investigate insurrection charges. CIO has since said that it does have the authority. So the CIO will decide its next move as early as today. Another summons request or an arrest warrant. Let's turn to Professor Song Si-ran this morning. Welcome back, Professor Song.
Good morning.
So another President Yoon's no-show increases the likelihood that the investigative body will file a court warrant for his arrest. Now, is 3 summons request the limit before an arrest warrant is issued?
Well, it's a customarily good number to give enough notices, but there is no legal specification that the summons is the limit. I think this has to be seen from a precedent and the more investigation into, kind of consideration into the circumstances. This is the first time that the president is being summoned like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go for another summon, but they cannot just say that, well, president refused, we're just not going to go ahead with this. So there is a little bit of clash between the executive branch and the investigation of the criminal nature. I mean, remember, CIO was specifically set up to investigate the presidents and the high-ranking officials. So they have to make a decision as to stand up for their authority to investigate.
So it's hard to tell what the CIO will do this time. Now, what Yoon's legal team is arguing is that the investigation body, CIO, doesn't have the right to look into the insurrection charges. Speaking from Yoon's side, is this a valid argument?
Well, there is a specifications in what kind of charges that they're looking at. Some languages are specific, some languages have a kind of an overall nature. I think the CIO is saying that after the bribery cases, abuse of powers, They do have the investigative power. Remember, CIO has a consolidated investigative power because there are other branches of the government that had the jurisdictions to investigate his criminal allegations. So I think that it is pretty weak that the president is saying, well, the law doesn't say specifically insurrection. That's not going to fly well in the court point of view.
Well, Yoon's legal team also believes the Constitutional Court's ruling on the impeachment trial should proceed, and that should be completed first, not the CIO's investigation. Is that possible, or should the two cases proceed together?
Well, they can make an argument, but remember that the impeachment and the insurrection have two different jurisdictions. One is criminal, the other is constitutional.
Right.
So if they go up to the highest level, one goes to the Constitutional Court, the other goes to the Supreme Court. So there's no reason why they should go hand in hand. Now, what they're saying is that because this cause of action arises from the same set of facts, there are provisions that says the Constitutional Court may yield to the criminal investigation. But at this point, they're not arguing that either. So I think they're just making arguments to, in my mind, delay the proceedings. But I think there's no reason why those two investigations and court proceedings can't go forward in parallel.
Well, we don't know what move the CIO will make today, as early as today, but isn't it solely up to the court who would issue a warrant to arrest President Yoon? How will the court make its decision based on what?
Well, you're right. First of all, CIO has to make a decision whether they would go for another summon or not, and to decide on whether to issue a warrant. And the court has to decide whether the warrant has validity. I think the court will look at the situation in a way that the constitutional scheme has allowed the CIO to be set up, and the CIO has a specific jurisdiction to look into the wrongdoings of the high-ranking officials. So invalidating the warrant probably will weaken the jurisdiction and the investigative power of CIO, and I don't think the judge or the court want to invalidate the institutional credo of the CIO. So yes, it is a constitutional crisis in a way that the executive branch and the judicial branch is at loggerhead at this point, but we all operate under the law, and the court probably will issue a warrant at some point if the president continues to refuse.
Well, let's say CIO does file for a arrest warrant, and the court does issue an arrest warrant. What happens if his security officials block efforts by the investigation team to arrest Yoon at his residence in Yongsan? What happens then?
Well, a similar argument, I think, that the court should say that if the security forces block the execution of the validly issued warrant, then they're obstructing justice. And it's a criminal matter. I think that should be pretty clear that the CIO has the jurisdiction to investigate, and investigation has to proceed with the warrant. And if the warrant is valid, then it should not be blocked. I think the court would be very specific about having those kind of authorities not hindered by the security forces.
Alrighty, Professor Song, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us this morning. We appreciate it as always.
My pleasure. Thank you.
In other news, South Korea's industrial production fell for the third consecutive month in November due to a slowdown in auto manufacturing. Data from Statistics Korea on Monday showed industrial output fell by 0.4% in November compared to the previous month. Manufacturing output fell due to strikes at auto companies, while output in the service sector also dropped. Meanwhile, retail sales, a key gauge of private spending, surged by 0.4% after seeing drops in September and October.
Good morning. I'm Kim Ji-young, and this is The World Now. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter has died aged 100. James L. Carter Jr., who served as the 39th U.S. President from 1977 to 1981, passed away peacefully at his home in Plains, Georgia, on Sunday afternoon local time, surrounded by his family, according to the Carter Center. He had reportedly been receiving hospice care at his home for health issues, including melanoma that spread to his brain and liver. At age 100, Carter was the longest-lived former president in U.S. history. Incumbent U.S. President Joe Biden paid tribute to Carter, describing him as a man of principle, faith, and humility, while President-elect Donald Trump said we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Jimmy Carter, a Georgia-born peanut farmer, won the presidency in 1976 with the promise of transparency amid the Watergate scandal and Vietnam War. He was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. Now, the country of Georgia has sworn in the ruling Georgian Dream Party's Mikhail Saakashvili as its new president. Now, the outgoing president, Salome Zurabishvili, however, has called foul play on the election, saying that she was the only legitimate president. Mikhail Saakashvili was inaugurated as president on Sunday, amid political turbulence in Georgia after the ruling party suspended its application to the European Union, which led to major anti-government protests. Saakashvili, a former footballer who played for Manchester City, is a conservative critic of the West, known for his right-wing views and speeches against LGBTQ people. The pro-EU outgoing president Zurabishvili said the Georgian Dream Party's victory in the October parliamentary election, which led to Saakashvili's presidency, was marked by fraud, saying that while she will leave the presidential palace, she refuses to step down. The European Union's Common Charger Law came into force on Saturday, obliging manufacturers to adopt USB-C chargers as a standard on most rechargeable electronic devices sold across the 27-nation bloc. Now, this means companies like Apple, which use different charging connector designs, will have to change the ports and cables on their products to USB-C. The law, which is the first of its kind in the world, was passed by an overwhelming majority in the European Parliament in October 2022. The EU's decision to standardize all chargers for electronic devices is expected to cut costs for consumers and waste from obsolete chargers. Now, while the enforcement began on Saturday, the EU said makers of laptops will have until early 2026 to follow suit. In the United States, Mega Millions lottery has said a winning ticket, estimated to be worth some $1.22 billion, was sold in California. The winning numbers for the Mega Millions lottery were announced on Friday, while the winning ticket, matching the numbers 3, 7, 37, 49, 55, and the gold Mega Ball 6, was found to have been sold at a convenience store in Cottonwood, California. Now, the identity of the winner of the fifth largest total pot in the history of the Mega Millions lottery is still unknown. The highest ever Mega Millions jackpot ticket, worth some $1.6 billion, was sold in Florida last year.
Temperatures are forecast to go up even higher than Sunday before they drop rapidly as we wrap up the year tomorrow with readings hovering near the norms. However, there is snow in the forecast. Gangwon-do province could see up to 5 centimeters of snowfall, and parts of Gyeonggi-do, Jeollabuk-do provinces could see flurries through tomorrow at dawn. Meanwhile, wildfire danger remains high in the East Coast regions with ongoing dry air and strong winds. Afternoon highs in most parts will be 1 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday, reaching double digits, topping out at 10 degrees Celsius in the capital, 11 degrees in Daegu and Gwangju this afternoon. It will be cloudy for most parts of Korea, and the air quality in central regions will turn bad in the afternoon. Sunny skies are expected for tomorrow, and it should be mostly sunny on New Year's Day morning. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.